Well, good morning, Crossroads Nation. How are you, Skip Nelson? I'm one of the volunteers that brings you Crossroads, and we're so excited that you've joined us here this morning. See that people are streaming in. Get a cup of coffee, get things organized, and buckle up for a fantastic morning that we've got in store for you. What a great way to start the day, right? To get to sit around, learn some really cool stuff, get connected with some folks, and hopefully be blessed by the process. We are thrilled to have you here. And just a little bit about the morning. We will be going through a variety of resources and things that Minnesota Crossroads has for you. You're not alone in this process. We're going to hear a great message from John Werder, and also I've got a video to show you lots of cool stuff. So as we get going, I wanted to touch base on just a few words about what I like to call the owner's manual, the Bible. And we've just completed a holiday that involved fear, right? People dressing up in costumes and trying to frighten one another, but in a good way, right? It's fun, and we laugh, and it's scary, but fun scary, controlled scary, right? We know it's not real, so we can laugh because it's not a real monster. It's somebody dressed up like a monster, right? Well, unfortunately, in life, a lot of times there's fearful things that are real, and certainly job transition is one. It's real, and the fears are real as far as not having income, or not knowing when we're going to land, or if we're going to like it, or whatever. I mean, it can be a very scary time. And do you realize that the Bible says the words "fear not" 365 times? Interesting that that's the number of days in the year. Maybe it's something we need to be saying every day. Fear not, because life always can throw things at us that can be a little scary. But again, whether it's job transition or life, we're not alone. And the most consistent and important passenger on our journey is Christ. He's with us in everything, including job transition. And so just keep in mind that you're not alone. And a couple passages that I want to relay. One, Psalms 23:4, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod, your staff, they comfort me. And Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So remember that you are not alone. And even though job transition can be fearful, there is nothing to be afraid of, because God is with you and he's got this. Lean into him and he will help you find something better than you can possibly imagine. First off, we want to look at a video done by Tim Keller. And it talks about our identity. And really our identity in Christ. That's something important to be kind of mindful of anyway, right, in life. But again, certainly when we're facing either unexpected or fearful things like job transition, it's something that our identity can be called into question a bit. I know it was for me when I went through job transition. I'm like, who am I? I was kind of defined by my career. I'd started my own company out of college and ran it for many years. And that was kind of my identity. So I thought. And so when that went away, I felt kind of lost. I'm like, who am I? And really, we're not defined by our career. We're defined by our relationship with Christ. And so it talks a little bit about that. And I think you will be blessed by Identity by Tim Keller.
What's identity? It's a sense of self and a sense of worth. What makes you feel significant? What makes you confident of your value? And if you have a sense of self and a sense of worth, we say you've got a real identity. It's an illusion to say that my identity comes from my inner feelings. People say it all the time. This is who I am. You decide who you are. Benjamin Nugent, in an essay, the New York Times said this: "When good writing was my only goal in life, I made the quality of my work the measure of my worth." And then he said, "For this reason, I wasn't able to read my own writing well. I couldn't tell whether something I had just written was good or bad. I needed it for it to be good in order to feel sane. I lost the ability to cheerfully interrogate how much I liked what I had written, to see what was actually on the page rather than what I would have liked to have seen or what I feared to see." In other words, when you make anything your identity, when you make a career your identity, or a particular body your identity, or a particular love relationship your identity, those things stop being good things and they start to crush you. In other words, he wanted to write. That's a good thing. He should have written. But when the writing was his identity, he said, "I made the quality of my work the measure of my worth," and to feel sane, I had to look at anything I wrote and said, "This is great." So I couldn't actually look at it realistically, and I couldn't certainly hear criticism. It's crushing. It's absolutely crushing. You know the place where C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity says, we're not really proud of having money, we're proud of having more money than the next person? We're not really proud of being smart, we're proud of being smarter. If you are the best violinist in your little town in Texas, and then you go to New York City and you get off at Penn Station and you realize the person who's playing the violin and begging, and people are throwing, money in the violin case, is better than you. And suddenly that high self-esteem you had because you were the best violinist in your town goes down into the toilet. Why? Because ultimately any identity that's achieved rather than received has to be excluding. In other words, you feel better because these other people aren't as good as you. These other people aren't as enlightened as you. These other people aren't as liberal as you. These people aren't as conservative as you. These people aren't as hardworking as you. These people aren't as insightful as you. That's how you feel good about yourself, by looking at other people and trashing them. And that's how it's going to work. So what kind of identity do we need? Here's what we need. You can't take yourself and bless yourself and name yourself. You need recognition. You need somebody from outside to come in and speak to you. I know we say, no, we don't need that. Of course, we're social beings, we're relational beings. We have to do that. Even when I see people online say, I have done this and my family's rejected me, but I know who I am and this is who I am, and suddenly thousands of people on social media are cheering them. They just got, well, they didn't just say, I have decided who I want to be. No, they have a new set of cheerleaders. They just took the old set of cheerleaders and just said, forget it, I want to be part of this set. You have to have a word from outside. Somebody's got to name you. And let me go a little further. What kind of person should this be, or what kind of people should this be? Well, you need the love and you need the approval and you need the esteem of someone you esteem if you're going to have any self-esteem. This person, whoever it is, should not be someone who could ever let you down or disillusion you. If you get your self-worth from the academy or from the art world or from individuals or from a loved one or something like that, what happens when they disillusion you, which they might? Where does your self-worth go? This also can't be a person who's fickle, somebody who's up and down with you, depending on how well you perform. Think about this. If it's really true that the praise of the praiseworthy is above all rewards, that you only if you have the esteem of someone you esteem will you have self-esteem. Only if you have the adoration of someone who adores you, then to know that God loves you, the Lord of the universe loves you, that would have to give you the most powerful basis for a stable identity possible. And secondly, is it based on your performance? No. If it's not based on your performance, it's not only stable, but you don't need to look down your nose at everybody else around you. In other words, the excluding aspect of your identity goes away. So how do you get that? You're adopted into God's family. That's a new identity, right? You are a citizen of heaven. Philippians 3:20. That's a new identity, right? You're united to Christ. That's a new identity, right? But I gotta say, when I just talk to you about it like that, in fact, when I just talk to myself about it like that, it's kind of abstract. But Jesus doesn't name us simply by showing up and giving us a new name or saying you're mine. He dies for us. So you lose the excluding aspect of modern identity. So you have something stable, so you have something coherent, so you know who you are. So you have an identity not achieved, which is crushing, but received. How do you do that? A, you got to believe he died for you. He says so. I lay down my life for my sheep. He doesn't just show up and give you a name. He dies for you. It's got to go to your imagination. It's got to be the aesthetic core of your life. You've got to learn how, when you're struggling with what the culture says about your identity, because you're not good looking enough, you're not smart enough, you're not having enough transformative sex, you're not this, you're not that. You've got to know how to pull out your identity in Christ and push it to the top of the deck. And you do that generally through imagination. I had a friend of mine some years ago that realized he was extraordinarily upset about the fact that he went to the kind of schools and he had the kind of background, and all of his colleagues had made a tremendous amount of money and had high status, and he was in a missionary ministry job and didn't have that kind of status, and he realized it was getting at him. He realized he needed to put Jesus' identity at the top of his deck, as it were. And he suddenly one day was reading in Philippians chapter 2, where it says, in the old King James, though he was in the form of God, he didn't count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he made himself of no reputation. And it went to the man's heart. And he says, Jesus Christ lost everything. He was crucified outside the gate. He made himself of no reputation. He did that for me. Why in the world am I worried about my status and my reputation? And he was freed. See, what he did was he took it to the center of his imagination, not just here I believe it. If you don't get it into your imagination, and if you don't do it regularly through worship, through thinking, through applying it at the moment, it doesn't go to the top, and you're back into where everybody else is, cultural captivity. How are you getting through your imagination what Jesus Christ has done for you down to a naming level in your heart?
Wow. I hope you enjoyed that. Just amazing words. And one of the things that stuck out to me was the term cultural captivity. Wow. Isn't that something? I've certainly felt that. We're so driven to be defined by all the things around us that really aren't consistent, and they're fleeting and really tough. In our situation in job transition, that might be our job. And so I hope you were blessed by that. Next, we're going to hear from John Werder, and we are so thrilled to have Mr. Werder here with us this morning. He is CEO of a company called Top 10 Talents, and he is an expert on strength finders and applying it to not only job understanding ourselves and applying ourselves in a job, but also in job search. And what a powerful tool that can be. John has been at this for many years. He's not only counseled all types of business professionals, but also every Major League Baseball team, half the NFL teams, a variety of sports teams. And so pretty much everybody across every type of the world. And we're just so lucky to have him speak to us this morning. He'll be chatting for about an hour, and then I will wrap up afterward with some resources that Crossroads has for you in your job transition, including a way to get this book, How Long, O Lord, How Long, devotions for job transition free. And so I'll talk about that in a little bit. So, but without further ado, let's welcome John 𝙤𝙤, and so looking forward to your message. Good morning, John.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to share this, share my side now, and let's see if we can get this to work. Always a little nervous about how to do this. Okay, looks like we're on, and here we go. Okay. All right. So my name is John 𝙤𝙤, and yes, Skip shared that I have a company called Top 10 Talents. And I've had this for 14 years now. And before that, just to show you that you can re-career yourself, I've always wanted to have my own company. And probably the main thing that I saw myself have joy in was helping people figure out their careers and how to be more productive as a team. So I do team building sessions with corporate teams. You know, the Vikings play in US Bank Stadium, so I'll name drop here. I was able to do, through some connections, do the management team of US Bank Stadium and talk to them how to be more effective in organizing that stadium. Can you imagine? They have over 300 events at US Bank Stadium. I can't even wrap my brain around that. Of how you organize that. But so there's a system that you put in place, and part of that system, a huge part, are how you manage the people that take care of everything, that organize and keep it running. But this idea of strengths has always been a part of my life, and I wanted to share just a little bit of see if I can do this. Here's a little short 1-minute video I did at the Mall of America. I was doing little 1-minute clips. I just want to give you some background of what I think about StrengthsFinder. And so just listen to this a second, and this will give you some context. Hey, this is John 𝙤𝙤 with the Strengths Minute. Today I want to talk to you about an easy way to understand how to career yourself, a career strategy. Now, most of us have been using StrengthsFinder as our tool of choice for assessing ourselves and our top 5 talents. But you know, there's a way to find all 1 through 34 talents that are in your order, as an order of preference that you gave them when you took the assessment. And what I'd suggest is to find that list of 1 through 34 and then cut it in half. And that your challenge is to live your life and your career life in the upper half, or the most preferred talents, 1 through 17. And the least preferred talents, 18 through 34, just don't go there. Those are your weak areas, your least preferred talents, as they say. So live your life, not only in your top 17, but as I like to say, in your top 10 talents. Those are the areas that you're most passionate about in producing good work. John 𝙤𝙤 with the Strengths Minute, top10talents.com. So there you have a little introduction, and StrengthsFinder has been out about 20 some years now. I think about 1999 or 2000, the first assessment came out, strengthsfinder.com. We're supposed to call it Clifton Strengths in honor of Dr. Don Clifton. Now, here is my old coach. So here's one of my strength stories that I share in most of my training. He is 85 in this picture here, and he passed away last year. He was a former All-American University, Tennessee runner-up, and he was the runner-up to Paul Hornung of the Green Bay Packers. If some of you can remember the Packers way back then, that was my high school days, and Paul Hornung and the Green Bay Packers had an incredible team, but he was runner-up. But he became it was his first head coach job at Iowa State. And he actually came in and had to talk to all of us seniors. His name is Johnny Majors. He had to talk to all of us seniors. So look at that. And that's 1968. And he said he had to put us in place of where we were going to stand with the new team, because he's coming in our senior year, and maybe some of us aren't going to start now. I started my junior year. It was an awful experience as quarterback. And he called me into his office and he said, John, he said, you're not a thrower. You're not a throwing quarterback. Now that looks like pretty good form to me there. Can you see the crowd? Notice it's all black and white. That's what we had back then. No, I'll show you a color here in a minute. He said, "You're not a thrower." And I hung my head a little bit and said, okay, he's going to bench me. He said, "You're not a thrower." He said, "You're a runner. I need a runner for this new offense that I'm going to put in." And he said, you're probably going to lead the team in rushing or running and carrying the ball. And I did. He actually built the offense around my strength of running. And that is the simple story, my story of something that happened. And he saw the talent or strength in me that I had lost because the guy before me was a big passing quarterback and broke some records. And I was his understudy, but I wasn't that good of a passer. And so with this running offense, I had one of the best experiences athletically. And a couple of years later, the Iowa State Cyclones started going to bowl games almost every year. He went on to Pittsburgh with Tony Dorsett. If you're interested in football, remember Tony Dorsett, great running back, made them #1 in the nation. And then he went to Tennessee, where most of his career was there. And to get a little trivia, Majors just left, went back to Pittsburgh because it had fallen down again, just as Peyton Manning was coming to Tennessee as their quarterback. And of course, we know about, a lot of us who love sports and football know the Manning brothers, Peyton and Eli, having great careers and winning Super Bowls. But that was Johnny Majors, and he passed away last year, but I got to see him a couple of years ago. So my goal here today is to maximize your understanding and application of what I want to call the strength mindset in your job search and even in your life. That when you live your life around what's strongest about you, you're just in a better place, you're happier, you're more fulfilled, and you're doing what you love to do, kind of a concept. And so I want to explain that a little bit using this tool. And I want to show you a way to make your interviewing more effective than I think you might be doing now. And some of you might be doing this, but I'd like to encourage you with this other way to see it. So here's a little bit of my background. I've been coaching and consulting and counseling people for a long time. And I've spoken a lot. This is one of the joys of my life, is to speak and influence people about some concept. And in this concept is to use your strengths. And yes, I've spoken to every Major League Baseball team and about a dozen football teams. I was a chaplain for a number of different pro athletic teams in Los Angeles and then here in Minnesota. And so I got to speak to these teams, and that's the way it worked out. You know, baseball has chapel almost for those that are interested, just about every Sunday morning while one team is out on the field practicing and batting and so forth, warming up. The other team's in the clubhouse just sitting around. So it's easy to have chapels for 15, 20 minutes with the guys that are interested. Football chapels, which are prolific around the NFL, are, we have our own chaplain of the Vikings. Tom Lamphere is a guy that I actually got to train in 30 years ago. He's still doing it. He's been real faithful to it. But they usually meet on Saturday nights when things are a little calmer. Sunday mornings, you know, you got to imagine that's hectic, just trying to get everything prepared, get them taped up and so forth, ready to go for that 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock times frame. Hey, so I want to talk to you about this concept I'm calling the strength mindset. And I want to tell you a story. I was working with Greg. Greg was a CFO type guy who had been out of work for a while. And I met with him and I showed him how to make his interviewing more visual. And this is what I want to show with you today, is this concept. And I said, Greg, here, look at this. Here's your top 5 talents. And here's a color chart that you can show in your interviews, that when they say, Greg, what are your strengths? You can, and I was practicing with him, here's mine. I said, Greg, you can say, hey, I'm glad you asked. I'd like to show you what my strengths are all about through this color chart system. And on the back, you can see on this page 1 through 5 in the triangle there, we call it the pyramid. And then you see this little graph on the left side of how the talents fit into those 4 quadrants. You know, a lot of the assessments have 4 learning styles or 4 quadrants or concepts that shows how a person thinks or how they act, their personality style. And StrengthsFinder has the same concept. And in this graphing, colorizing of your 5 talents, Greg was excited to share this in his next interview, and his next interview was the next day. So here's the back side. So you've got a front and back. It's maybe easier to see it on the PowerPoint, but here's mine, front and back. You've got some bullet points to share. And I teach people how to use this visual aid of your top 5 talents or strengths in an interview situation. You know, when they ask the question, what are your strengths? You only have about three minutes to answer that question. How could you make it more effective? Well, I think it's to be visual, be visual. And so Greg shared it the next day, and he calls me up and he says, John, I got the job. I said, how did that happen? He said, well, I did what you told me. I shared the chart, showed him what my main themes were for the job description, and showed that I really fit what they were looking for. And they hired me on the spot. I said, that's fantastic, Greg. So my best student, because I've trained over 1,000 people in this format of using this color chart system. It's a company called Core Clarity. Gallup would not certify me 14 years ago to be one of their coaches, to be a certified Gallup strengths coach. They do now, and I took that training in January just to upgrade myself. And but I found a friend who was the training director for his nonprofit. It's the ministry called Cru, or Campus Crusade. And he said, John, you've got to see this. You can use StrengthsFinder through this company. And so I did. So that's another story. So Greg got the job. So there you go. Now, I call this the basketball effect. And it's the idea, it's being silly about it. But if you brought, here, I got a basketball. If you brought a basketball to the interview, what do they have? What does the interviewer have to say? So you can even do it on Zoom. And as you hold it, you just wait for them to say, why in the world do you have this basketball? Well, you have to have a reason to share, but it's making a memorable statement of who you are. For instance, the basketball represents, the last team that I was leading, I helped the team bounce back so that we were able to be more profitable even in the first quarter that I was in charge of this team. Bounce back, get it, basketball, and so forth. So to do something like that, I have another story to tell you. A young man came to me, and he was in safety for manufacturing companies, and he was learning the ropes, and he wanted to move up, and he actually was living in southern Minnesota. He wanted to move up to Minneapolis, and he said, we got together, and he said, I decided that I wanted to keep interviewing up in Minneapolis, so I would take a day off and go interview. And I would ask people, safety managers what their best habits were for creating a safety environment in their plant. And so he began to keep a notebook of those safety things of each company. And I said, well, how many companies have you done so far? Well, the notebook was really thick, like this. And he said, well, I've done like 35 companies so far. And I said, that is amazing. And he said, every time now that I interview, I place the notebook on the desk, much like the basketball. I placed the notebook on the desk, and I said, I'd like to be your safety manager. And I have interviewed 35 different companies and their safety managers. And this is all the good things that companies have done, their secret formula of how to keep the manufacturing plant in a safe position. And I'd like to be your hiring manager or your safety manager. And they said, well, could we look at the notebook? I said, well, he said, well, you'd have to hire me. I thought that was a classic statement. You'd have to hire me. But look at all the homework he did by taking the initiative and writing down what the best practices were of each of those manufacturing plants. So I thought that was an amazing thing that he was doing. Just a young guy in his late 20s. He was a single father at the time and had a little boy, and he really wanted to do better for his little family. Now, many of you know about StrengthsFinder. We're supposed to call it Clifton Strengths. And why is that? It's to honor Dr. Don Clifton, who passed away in the early 2000s. But it really is a phenomenal thing that they're doing. Gallup owns the rights to it. There's another story behind that. Dr. Clifton had his own consulting firm, and George Gallup had Gallup, that does all these fantastic surveys and so forth and studies. Dr. Clifton bought Gallup back in the 80s. And so he came out with this StrengthsFinder model. The StrengthsFinder is really a part of all these assessments like Myers-Briggs and DISC that are created by what I want to call positive psychologists, as opposed to, let's say, regular psychologists who work with mentally ill people, trying to get them to be better and overcome their illness. But the positive psychologist said, what are we going to do for regular people, normal people who are out there in the workplace trying to do good things, trying to feed their families? And so what can we do to better their lives? So that's where all these assessments have come from. And you can even get a master's now in positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, where Dr. Martin Seligman is known as the godfather of positive psychology. But StrengthsFinder has been around for about 20 some years now, and it's used by a lot of companies. Best Buy here in Minneapolis is one of the great users of StrengthsFinder, and they actually put the 5 talents of each person on the doorpost of their office, so that as you walk into that office, you can see what the 5 talents are of that person. You kind of get a flavor of what kind of person you're going to be talking to, and you can speak in that language that the person tends to prefer. And so here is Dr. Clifton making a statement of saying this: what will happen when we think about what is right with people rather than fixating on what is wrong with them? So the whole idea of finding out what is the strength or the best of each person was really captured his imagination and his work life. Dr. Don Clifton. Now his son is now the CEO of Gallup and is carrying on this mission. I'm having trouble with the next slide here. Let's see. Working well. Not sure what I did. Let's see here. Yeah. Sorry about that, folks. Let's see if I can change this a little bit. Huh. Okay, I'll do it this way, by hand. Sorry. All right, so StrengthsFinder is owned by Gallup, but there was a woman out of Dallas area that my friend put me onto, and she had a company called Core Clarity. And before that, she was actually taking an MBA class where they had to do StrengthsFinder. Most MBA classes will do StrengthsFinder. I found out they really don't do much with it. If you take an MBA, I'm sorry to say something negative here, but they got to keep going on with their curriculum. And so they do StrengthsFinder and they discuss it maybe for part of their session, but they had to bring homework back to her group. It's an evening class, She's in commercial real estate, and she comes up with this concept of a quadrant system of the 34 talents, and I'll show you that in a minute. And she also created 12 personality styles, like Myers-Briggs has 16. She created 12 personality styles that we call core drills. And it looks something like this. She didn't want to, she's in commercial real estate. She said, I don't want to start a business, but every person in her MBA class said, you've got to share this with my team. This is so good. It makes so much sense. It's easy to understand. And so this was the basic concept that she put together. She read the definitions of each of the 34, and then she placed them within these 4 quadrants personality styles. Now the blue, let me just highlight each of them a little bit. The blue are all the relator talents. So these little characters or little ant characters, we call them ants, A-N-T-S on the end, ants, like talent. And these 2 talents are communicating with a wire, and they're going deep in relationship. That's what these talents are all about. So you can see empathy and harmony, includer and individualization. These are all, she would read the definition and then put them into this category of relator. So I call these, she calls them connectors. I just call them relators. The magenta, same 2 little ants, they're zapping each other. They're influencing each other. She calls them mobilize. These are the talents used to motivate others to action. And so those are the talents that are, I call them the influencing talents. The green, look, that's the longest list here. There's 12 here. These are all the thinking, she calls them reflecting talents. These are the thinking talents, and you can see analyticals in there, but that's different from strategic, and that's different from ideation. So these are all the thinking talents that someone could have in their first 5. Then the orange are all the doing talents, I call them. She calls them energize. And these are the talents that push yourself towards results. So you can see the little ant character chasing the carrot mentality. So this is the basic core clarity document in which your 5 get mapped and looks something like this. So here's my 5 talents listed there. And you're able to see them in the triangle or the pyramid with the little characters in there. And then you can see how they deposit themselves in the upper left. You can see that there's 2 magenta and 2 blue. Now, here's one of the secrets that you don't get from Gallup, but you get from core clarity. Anytime there's 2 or more talents in a quadrant, that's a strength quadrant. So John needs to have relating to people as real strong in his work life and also influencing. So the idea of coaching people fits my blue, and the idea of facilitating seminars and speaking and so forth fits my magenta of influencing people about something. And in this case, it's about strengths, of living your life around your strengths. You know, from a Christian standpoint, God has designed you with certain talents and strengths in which you are to worship him by acting them out in the workplace that you're in the world. In 2022, God wants you to use your strengths to honor him. So it's not hard to understand that from a biblical context. Then I told you about the second page has these bullet points that can be used very easily in an interview situation. And I've been training people how to even simplify this down to 1 or 2 sentences that are really descriptive of you, and how to use these little phrases she's put in that you're natural at something. Here for maximizer, naturally excellent, natural friend, naturally happy for positivity. That's me. The empathy, naturally intuitive. So when we say you're natural at something, that's pretty good identifier that you're good at that, and you're a natural. And that's part of your strength DNA, I call it. So then here's one of here's the personality. You can see that my talents fit into those 3 quadrants. It doesn't matter what number, but this creates this profile of personality for me and for others who have their talents in those 3 quadrants, that I'm purpose-driven, smart, approachable, outgoing, externally focused. Yeah, that's me. Capable of leading others to action. Yes. Often have personal mission statements. Yes. Team-oriented, adds gusto to any group. Critical that they use their talents daily and love what they're doing. Wow, this speaks to my DNA. I'm amazed that they can get this. They can pinpoint me in a personality style. I've always been fascinated with Myers-Briggs and have used that in the past with a lot of clients. So that's the idea that you could, in an interview, you could share an individual talent, or you can share a personality style of what you're like. And here's, we can't read it, it's small print, but here's the 12 personality styles. We call these the core drills. And they're basically the personality styles of each person. You can see lifeline. This is the rescuer or the caregiver type person. Stabilizer. Here's passionista, that I am. Force of nature. Optimizers. Bridgineers. On the second page are trailblazers. Look, the talents fit into those two quadrants on the bottom. Thought rockets. Super drivers. Illuminarios. The talents fit on the top. And now here's the all green person, is called the guru. This is highly intellectual person. And you can see over here, there's just 1% in the population. That's what that means. And then the last one is like 0.5%, called the pace setter, which is really, really rare. So anyway, this is some information that Gallup does not provide that I've been able to use to benefit others in not only team training, but also in this thing we're talking about today, is about interviewing more effectively. So here's another example of somebody having their talents in 1 in the blue and 4 in the green. Now that is amazing. Person that fits into what's called, and the personality here is shown here. I've got a little bit of statement here. Here we go. Okay. So here, these bridgineers are masters at designing and creating bridges between information and people, all about interaction with the world around them and inside their heads. Knowledgeable and approachable, often sought for their sage advice, typically exude an aura of calmness and serenity. For some, overcoming inertia is a challenge, and they look to others for traction. Add depth and cohesiveness to any team. Now, I work with a lot of IT teams, and a lot of the workers, employees are of this personality. Deep into the green, deep into thinking about technology, but also wanting to share it and communicate it, interact with others to share what they've been learning. And so here's another pattern, what we call this, you can see the talents are in these 3 quadrants. And we call this person the lifeline, or a caregiver. I call it, the lifeline is the idea of being a lifeguard, a rescuer. You're going to throw the inner tube out, a lifeline. Salt of the earth, our natural caregivers and caretakers, servant leaders. Depending on their talents, their focus may be on the, if they're strong with the blue or the green or the orange, they're really into those kind of subjects. Steady and reliable, can often feel overlooked or taken for granted. Experience joy when they're in service to others, an essential core component of every team. I call these people the worker bees. I mean, they are really faithful to the organization that they work for. And they sometimes won't leave an organization because they're just so loyal. But when things are toxic, they'll even stay, and which is not necessarily the best thing. Anyway, so here are a couple little testimonies just here at the end. Connie is a logistics manager for CHS, and she said, John's coaching through this core clarity helped me find my new job. So this is the pattern of what I was doing. I was able to be the Strengths Finder coach at Wooddale, and have done some sharing with Cornerstone at Grace and other job support groups. I was working for, remember the term workforce centers? They've changed the name now. She says he provided guidance on how to apply my top 5 strengths to the past and future opportunities, and so forth. So just a couple of little testimonies here. Lenny, who's a CFO, said John provided assistance with Strengths Finder. And after spending a couple hours with John, he gave me this core clarity chart that has been a valuable tool in job interviews. And so you can, just a couple of people who've been appreciative. But I tell you, so many people, certain ones of you might be excited about having something like this, a color chart system to share about your strengths. And I'm teaching people how to use it online as well as in person. And mostly it's been in person. But, so this is the work that I do. Just to wrap this up, I work with teams of people. This is a search firm. The woman to my left right here is Mary Nutting of Core Talent. And she's brought me in a couple of times to do here's the charts, the personality styles that were in chart form that we're able to pin up on the wall, and everybody put their star of what kind of personality they were in the group. But what we're talking about today are these, I wanted to share these coffee sessions that I get together with some of you. If 4 or 5 of you in the Minneapolis area would like to get together around coffee and just talk about the different charts you have and how to interview more effectively, I would create a color chart for each of you. It costs a little bit of money, not much, but I would ask for you to make a little bit of investment in yourself. And you can just contact me personally through messaging through LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. And so here we're talking about strengths in this group of marketing people. And then here's another coffee session. Some of you, I love the Good Earth restaurant. This is in the Good Earth. You can see some of that decoration of the place there. I love that tea. I can't make the tea myself in my own home, so I have to go there almost weekly. But this is what I love doing, is sharing how to be your best interview self. And so I just want to thank you for the time to share. There's some of my contact information. But I'd love to have you call me or contact me however you can through my top10talents.com website, or just messaging me through LinkedIn at I'm at John Warder. So there you go.
Thank you, John. Great message. And I was taking notes feverishly. What a wonderful offer to grab coffee and take a little deeper dive. I think that chart would be just gold going into an interview. Anything to do to stand out. You joked about the basketball, and maybe some people wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. But gosh, if you're competing against who knows how many other people, you don't know what is necessary to kind of make you stand out, to bring you to the top of the pile, so to speak. And if you walk in with a basketball, that's going to stand out. People are going to remember that. And what a great way to just be a little different and joke around a little bit. I think it's a great way to stand out. What a great idea.
Skip, I hope it makes sense that it doesn't have to be something totally overt like that, like a basketball, but it could be a notebook of your notes, just like that young man did. In the art world, a person brings their artwork in notebooks to share, and that's a common thing in the art world, or at advertising or something like that. But it could be anything. It could be even what you wear. I'm wearing this coat in honor of somebody who was my boss, and it makes me think of a story about what he did with his coat one time, and that was a leadership example to me of how I should lead my people. What he did with a coat. So it's as creative as you want to make it, but it could be as dumb as carrying a basketball.
Sure. Yeah, just anything to stand out. I think it's a great idea. And finished a little early this morning, folks. So, it's a great opportunity. If you have questions for John, he is available. So just pop them in the chat box, and be more than happy to answer them. Something specific about your search, or have you done anything with Strengths Finders, or do you have questions more about applying it or anything like that? Paul mentioned, he said, INFP, empathy, adaptability, belief, harmony, and connectedness. He said, seriously, I have felt stopped from revealing the strengths of my soft skills. Any comments on that, John?
Yeah, I think you can find articles and videos out there now that say the soft skills are really what companies are looking for, and it's created a boon with this assessment called emotional intelligence, that your EQ score is more important than your IQ score, that the way you treat people. I did a study of all the Gallup books that have come out. They write a book a year, and the first book in 1999 was called First Break All the Rules. They found that the managers who broke all the conventional rules of leading their teams. They broke the rules. That is, the conventional rule was don't get serious, don't get friendly with your employees because you might have to fire them someday. No, they were all friendly in some way with their people. Their people loved working for them. They were likable, and they felt like their bosses had their backs. They advocated for them. And so this created a unity with those teams that created more productivity. And they were studying some of the big box stores, like remember Kmart and so forth. And they found that the best managers, now here's the key link, the best managers customized or individualized the job description for each employee. Do you think each employee would be happier? Yes. That simple concept was huge in allowing these managers to see huge productivity. Now, one of the latest books that came out, I think it came out during the COVID time, like 2019, 2020, was the title is called It's the Manager. It's the manager that's going to affect the culture because they're farther down the chain, not from the leadership. It's the manager that day in, day out are working with those frontline workers and employees that can change the culture by customizing and advocating for each employee, customizing their job description. I think that's a phenomenal. So if you're going to look for a job, look for a person, a boss, if you can. Sometimes that's hard. Find out if you can speak to the hiring manager and see what kind of leader. Are they a kind-hearted, empathetic, care for you kind of a person that you could value working for?
Well, it's a great idea. And what a novel concept, right? To take a generic job description, kind of customize it to the individual. Seemingly sometimes it almost seems commonsensical, but of course, would most companies do that? No, we don't have time for that. That make too much sense. Got a few comments here. Doreen Jackson, good morning, Doreen. Thanks for joining us. Said, I've taken both MBTI and StrengthsFinders. I am INFP, and my top strength is adaptability. She said, I had a job where we had a very strong team, and we lost our contract for our jobs last year, and we still get together and play bingo and other things. So what a tribute to that team, right? That they were so connected and got along so well that even though the job's not bringing them together, they get together anyway.
That's so good that when you can work. So, HR is worried about engagement, and Gallup, who's done such decades of work in the engagement area, would say only about 30% of the workforce population, it goes up and down along the 30% mark. I think this year it's like 32%. So it hardly gets above that and a little bit below that, but it's so consistently bad that 70% of the workforce don't feel good about their jobs in some way. And part of that is working in your strengths, but also part of that is who the boss is, because Gallup says that the reason most people leave their jobs is because of a toxic relationship, typically the boss. And then it's working with a team that likes each other. So StrengthsFinder is one of those tools, and I think one of the most effective of creating this good unity among a team, because you see what the talents are that another person has that you don't have, and you can appreciate that of what they do for the team.
No, that makes total sense. John, what would you say? I mean, a lot of the folks online are obviously in job transition. And I know when I was in job transition, I had, like I said, run my own company for 30 years. So I had never even looked for a job. I had no idea what the process was or what to do. And I just know that I felt lost. I felt less. I felt useless some of the time. I felt unvalued. And as I kind of struggled to kind of figure all this stuff out, what would you say from your perspective if somebody comes to you and they're like, I'm in job transition, I'm trying to kind of figure things out, what my next move is. What would you say is kind of the things that you would specifically say of steps that you would suggest that they would kind of undertake to best prepare and present themselves in their job search?
That's such a great question. And it's really a key question, because we're not used to interviewing. we're not used to looking for a job, but it's like taking care of. I'm working, and so we kind of forget about things like building a network and so forth. So one of my strongest suggestions, as I think it makes sense that I've been in the workforce like 50 years, so here I'm 75 years old, and I'm not retiring at all.
You're not 75 years old. Come on. You look better than I do. That's ridiculous. How do you look so good?
My point is this, trying to stay healthy, working out and so forth. But the point is, when you do what you love to do, I think you should do that as long as you can if you have your health. And because there's endorphins that go on when you do things that you love to do. But every one of us has a network of people around us that care for us. And if they were to ask you, would you help me with some contacts about finding a new job? You need a job? Sure, I'd love to help you. They would help you if you were, would you help them? Yes, you would help them if they asked you. But now you want to go to them, go to the top 10, another top 10 talents concept, go to your top 10 or 15 people who really cares for you, and you care for them, and you show them something about yourself, of what you want, what you're looking for, and you network off of their contacts. You see, there are companies that give bonuses to their employees for bringing somebody in their network to the company, because if they like this employee, they've hired them, they've got a job with their company, and you bring them some good person, they want to hire that person. That's your friend. Gallup says that when you have a real friend in your company, that also causes good endorphins and good engagement. It's a good engagement factor concept also, of having a friend in the company. So to strategize around your top 10 or 15 contacts is really powerful. They're going to understand that you're not good at this. They're going to give you more of the benefit of the doubt. They're going to say, you need a job? Of course I want to help you. Okay, what do we need to do? So I've even taken some people that I've been coaching, and we have a little barbecue at their house. They invite 6 or 8 friends to have the barbecue. And we've gone over their Myers-Briggs, their Strengths Finder. I use a chart, show all the summary of this person. And I said, let's brainstorm how Bill can get his next job. Any ideas that come to your mind about where Bill could? So I did this one guy who was in the banking business. He hated being a banker. His mom was a banker. And we did this barbecue thing at his house. And when it came out, he said, the group said, what do you really want to do, Tom? He said, well, I want to be in HR work. I mean, I love people. Everything in the banking business is transactional. I want to go deeper with people. And somebody in that group knew somebody that was willing to hire Tom as an HR person for his company. And it was through that network that it happened almost overnight, per se. And that's how I think is one of the easiest ways to get a job faster than doing anything that we do online and so forth.
What a great suggestion, John. I mean, the people that know us the best. And the thing that I found in my job transition is, initially I run my own company, and it would kind of define me. I was a little sheepish and almost afraid to let people know I was looking, because what are they going to think? Even though it was by my choice that I decided to do something different, are they going to think I failed, my company failed, whatever? And I found that it took me a while to be willing to let people know I was looking. And how silly is that, right? I mean, because to your point, the people that know us best, they know us, they're willing to help us, but they can't if they don't know we're looking. And I think that's a great suggestion, to start with the people that really know us best and try to build off of that. I'm looking at comments. Let's see here. Paul said he got laid off exactly a month ago, and is perhaps the best thing that's ever happened to me. I don't know if you've heard this. I've heard this a lot with people that I coach, that it's kind of like, the analogy I use is like working at McDonald's or eating at McDonald's, right? It's not great food. You kind of know what you're going to get. And I find a lot of people in their career, same deal. They're not thrilled. It's not really, they're not particularly fulfilled, but it pays the bills. So, they're going to just keep at it. And the job transition, not their choice kind of gives them an opportunity, to your point, to kind of reset and focus on the things that, what do I really like to do? What do I find fulfilling? And a lot of times I've heard numerous times that people will say, my goodness, I wouldn't have quit and looked for something else, but the fact that I had to was the best thing that ever. I found I'm so much happier, kind of a thing. Do you ever hear things like that?
Yeah, that's so good. And people say, I wish I had done it sooner, kind of a comment. And right, I think even if you have a job, to inch yourself forward with networking and reading and looking at other things that could be more fulfilling to you, because you're not just one job. You know, one of the problems of a lot of these pro athletes, they're not just a football player. And after, you know, it's a short-lived occupation. Yeah, they might make millions. Some of them have wasted it, but others who have been frugal, what's the next thing? And so we're all dealing with this issue of doing what we love to do and seeing if we can get paid to do it. You know, there's the syndrome of the starving artist. I like to paint, but nobody will buy my paintings. So we have to consider that reality. But to move yourself forward in something that could be more fulfilling. I had a guy who was an attorney, and he said, yeah, my dad was an attorney. My grandpa was an attorney. I said, well, what if you could have done it over, what would you have done? He said, I would have been a teacher. I said, well, why don't you teach right now? He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, Mitchell Law School is just down the road here. You could teach part-time as an adjunct professor these days. That's a common thing. So he's teaching at Mitchell Law School and having a ball. And with the knowledge that he's gained over, 10, 15 years that he had the lifestyle now and couldn't see himself transitioning to something less, but he could get his fulfillment from doing something part-time. That's why a lot of people do, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, Little League, soccer teams, men and women coaching their kids' stuff. That's all part of the fulfillment factor that I like to call it.
No, it's so true. And don't you see also that a lot of times there's so much more common people doing the fractional kind of work as opposed to working for one company, 40 hours, kind of the typical structure. They're saying, you know what, I'd prefer to work maybe project-based or part-time, so to be, maybe 20 hours at this company and 20 hours at that. More flexibility, more variety, whatever. Have you heard more about the kind of the fractional piece these days?
Oh, yes. My best client is a fractional CFO. And it's kind of a funny story. I've known him like 10 or 12 years now. And about every 3 years, he will call me up or write me an email and say, John, I'm with another company. I need to bring you in to do my finance team. And so I almost can do it by the watch. It's about 3 years now. He should be calling. Ring, ring, ring. There he is. And the latest, so what's funny is he kept getting farther and farther into Western Minnesota. And he finally calls me up last year in January. And he said, I'm in Bozeman, Montana.
Oh my goodness.
He flies back and forth. He spends a week there, might spend a long weekend back home, and this is satisfying to him. And I said, well, I could never do that, but some people can, and it really is stimulating to them in that way. And it's been a great thing to see him thrive. But also with finance, when you think of the details of numbers and everything and keeping track of finances of any company, he has an appreciation for helping his staff find their niche within that context of the finance department. And he's used the StrengthsFinder model. And I'm appreciative that he's used me as the consultant to come in and train his people. It's just been a great experience for me. And I hope for him, I'm sure he keeps calling.
Well, that's a good indicator, I would say. Not only, I'm sure, great for him, but great for the people he works with, right? I mean, what a gift he gives them to better understand themselves and their strengths. And we're getting tons of comments. They keep coming here, John. So I'll keep reading. And one thing that I want to mention, I noticed on our attendees, one of our attendees is a gentleman by the name of George Murray. I don't know if you know George, but George is a phenomenal resource and wrote a book called Hired How to Cut Your Career Search Time in Half. Just finished his second book. So great to see you this morning, George. And make sure you, if you're looking, highly recommend George's, both the books are fantastic. A lot of good resources out there. Carrie says, when one door closes, another door opens. And isn't that true? I know I've heard it. And I know you have too many times, John. Maybe wouldn't have chose to close the door, but once it was closed, even better ones opens up. Paul asks, has anyone heard of the Holland occupational themes? Another concept to the way Clifton Strengths something is explained. Does that ring a bell? Holland occupational themes, John?
Yes, John Holland is another one of these positive psychologists and came up with his own version. So my, StrengthsFinder doesn't include other kinds of talents, but the John Holland model does. It has an artistic personality, an enterprising personality. And it has, instead of 4 quadrants, I think it has 6 or 8 pie pieces, of which there are numerous talents in those that you can assess yourself in that way. And it actually can be connected to a way to see job options in a database. I think one of the government databases. Remember the Strong Campbell test that you would take maybe in high school or something? Remember the old comment? I said, okay, Mom and Dad, I took this test in high school and they said I'd be a good funeral director. What? And, it sometimes was hilarious of what it would recommend, but it had to do with what the interests were of the person, that maybe they liked biology and animals. And I don't know how they assessed that, but that was kind of the humorous thing about the Strong Campbell test.
Well, sometimes we do have to chuckle, right? The process, even not intended, can be funny, and it's better to chuckle than to cry. So it's better to try to find the humor in this crazy process. Let's see here. Claudia says, good morning. How often do you see individuals who want to pursue a career that requires skills or strengths not currently in their wheelhouse? Top 5 strengths, she says, or that come naturally. And if so, how successful are they in that transition?
So I love that question, because it speaks to the idea that when in the 34 talents that Clifton Strengths has, and I mentioned in my little video that you try to live in the upper half rather than the lower half. Now, my CFO friend, number 34 was empathy. And when we do the training, all his team would laugh at him because he doesn't have empathy at all, but he can be empathetic. It's just not in his top half or his top 10. And so he's less oriented to being empathetic with people and more prone to be an achiever of getting stuff done. Both are good traits. So he actually leans. So one of the people in his team typically had empathy. And so he would lean on that person to say, hey, anybody, should I know anything about anyone on the team that needs some empathy? And so typically it was his assistant would say, well, hey, Mary lost a family member last week, and maybe you could say something nice to her. And so he'd go do that. So it was like you were playing off of each other's strengths to create this team concept that I really love. It's almost like my weaknesses are your strengths and vice versa. And we don't have all the strengths. So, and anybody who gets trained in something that's not in their strength area, we can do some, let's say, good work, but it's not going to necessarily be highest performing, because when you match a job with what you're intrinsically interested in and love to do, you're going to go farther ahead of the rest of the pack who are just doing it as a job. So Yeah, sometimes in transition. I remember in 1987, I had 10 different part-time jobs, from delivering newspapers to doing all kinds of part-time things to keep bread on the table, you might say, and allowed me to interview for positions during the day. I was, you know, you do what you have to do, and you're not that good at it, but it's a functional job. They pay you a wage, an hourly wage or whatever. But I always saw it as a short-term thing, but it did last a year. And I was always trying to figure out what was the next best part-time job that would give me time to do some other things, to interview and so forth. So you do what you have to do.
Yep, so true. And don't you find too sometimes that as we go through Strengths Finders or something like that, some type of an assessment, that even just identifying what our strengths are and maybe the things that are not are, she was talking about in, you know, what are you doing if something's not in your top 5? Maybe like the story that you related, John, that the person understand that empathy or whatever was not one of their strengths, but because they were aware of it, they were able to kind of focus and put more effort into doing something that they maybe knew was a shortcoming.
That's really good. It's not that you can't do it. It's just that it's not preferable. These are, what are the preferences that you like for doing good work to you? So I, as a manager, if I were managing you, Skip, I would want to know that, because I would want to pick up on that energy that you have, that internal motivation that you have, not that I have. I have a different set. I want to understand your set of talents to take advantage of for the work that we're called to do. Yeah, so
Awesome.
A lot of people, though, are working in areas that are just not very satisfying, and it can affect you. It can create more stress, let's say, in your life eventually over time. But to pursue the better of yourself is, I think, always called for.
Awesome. Now I understand that you're actually in George's second book. Well, that makes it even more credible right there. If you got George, always got the best people and information, so that just stands to reason that you'd be part of it.
Well, George did interview me, and I'm appreciative of that, and it's fun to think that he would want to use my quote or whatever he did there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff. The two of you together, holy smokes, that's unstoppable for anybody in job transition. Let's see here. Doreen said, took Strong Campbell, said it could be a MP. Some chat messages. Paul said might be from another platform. Didn't see that yet. I don't know what Strong Campbell doesn't mean anything to me. Strong Campbell?
Yeah, Strong Campbell is that assessment that is done sometimes with high school kids.
Got it.
You know, there is a Strengths Finder or a Clifton Strengths for children that maybe could encourage some people. You can look at that. For teenagers, it's called Strengths Quest, and ages 10 to 14, I think. And there's some wonderful parenting materials that Gallup gives out on, let's say on, you know, you can find it online for that. There's a book around Strengths Quest that shows how to encourage your child into their strength areas. So a lot of the assessments given to high school students is more around interests. What are you interested in? Well, I love science. Well, that puts you in the science category, and be a veterinarian. But there's some good to that, but it doesn't necessarily take advantage of what a person's talents or strengths are. And in the children's version, ages 10 to 14, they assess 10 talents. There's 10 talents, and they give you your top 3. So that's interesting. They've kind of, I don't say dumb it down, but simplified it for an understanding of your child.
Got it. Awesome. Well, John, this has been fantastic. Thank you for your wonderful presentation and being willing to answer the numerous questions that have been coming in. Just fantastic information. I know everyone benefited from it, and we can't thank you enough for sharing of your knowledge and time.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll finish up here by going through some of the many resources that Grace Crossroads has for you, and including as I mentioned, a way that you can get this free copy of this book, which I will cover here shortly. So I'm going to share my screen with you and go over some of the resources that are available to you at Minnesota Crossroads. I found that in my job transition, like I said, I had never been through job transition, having started my company out of college. And so I didn't know really what to do or what the resources were at all. And so groups like Minnesota Crossroads were incredibly helpful to me. We are kind of based in Grace Church in Eden Prairie. When we meet in person, which hopefully will be soon. We're all looking forward to getting back in person, but that's where we'd meet. But we're also affiliated with Woodbury Lutheran and Arden Hills Church, North Heights Lutheran. And so those are the three that when we meet in person that we have meetings at. But something that you and your job transition need to be tied into is this, mncrossroads.com. It is a fantastic site and really will give you not only educational things about job transition, but also jobs, events that Crossroads has on an ongoing basis. There's a lot of things that, that Crossroads has going on that you want to make sure that you take advantage of. Because they're all very expensive. You have to write out checks to me, Skip Nelson, Nelson, and I'll make sure. No, I'm just, there's no cost, zero, free. You don't have to spend anything for this. I mean, just be able to hear somebody like John or go onto the YouTube channel and find out there are national speakers, incredible presentations and information that is available to you free of charge whenever you want them. And so take advantage of that. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Now, just specifically at Minnesota Crossroads, there's incredible stuff on an ongoing basis, on a weekly basis. Right after this event, 9 to 11, there is a networking called Networking with Grace, run by Wes Roper and Wes Tang. And they do a phenomenal job. It's a great networking group. You sign up for it on the same way that you signed up for this event. Again, free of charge, will help you connect with people and allow others to help you connect with targeted companies and things that you've got. We also have one-on-one coaching available. If you have questions about, gee, I'd like somebody to look at my resume, or I'd like to do a mock interview, or whatever it might be. The one-on-one coaching is available anytime. There's a group of us that are willing to help you out in this regard one-on-one. And we've all come from very different backgrounds, and which is great. You get really unique perspectives on any number of different things. We're also big believers in prayer. God has got this. You are not alone. God is in charge. He has got this for you. He's got an amazing plan, an amazing job that is going to come. It isn't always on our terms, and that can be frustrating when it takes longer than we want. And I would joke that it'd be nice to get the memo sometime, God, if you can just kind of let me know what the plan is here. But there is a plan, and you will get there if you follow the suggestions and the process that we teach here. It will happen. We just don't always know what God's plan is. And part of that, as far as the process, is we also have an 8-week class on exactly how to find a job as quickly as possible, get you landed and in your ideal job as quickly as possible. And it goes through everything, every element of the whole process. You can see interviewing, assessment, networking, resumes, anything you can imagine. And so it's great. We're starting them every month. So if that's something that you'd be interested in, reach out at MN Crossroads and we can get you plugged into one of those groups. There also is the MN Crossroads Career Network on LinkedIn. So make sure that you plug into that, because there's a lot of alumni. We've had thousands of people go through this program over the years. And there's alumni that are in numerous companies all across the country and probably across the world. And so they are out there, and they may be at your ideal company, your targeted company that you want to get into. And I can tell you, if you network with somebody who's been through job transition, they're good people because they know the battle, they know the struggles, and they will help you. So make sure you tie into the LinkedIn group. It's a fantastic resource and ways to connect with other alum. As I mentioned, the YouTube channel, it is a treasure chest of fantastic presentations there for you whenever you want them, all different topics. Make sure you tie into that because it is fantastic information. And there's additional resources. I'm proud that my company, 𝘾𝙞𝙞𝙣𝙜 Financial, has been a supporter of Minnesota Crossroads for many years. We continue to be, and there are other companies like 𝘾𝙾𝙞𝙣𝙜 that support this ministry and the incredible things that the ministry does, that Harry Herschel, who's put the team together, has put together a great team and great resources, and they are there and available for you. But there's a lot of companies that are and people that make this happen. I put together 3 workshops for you, first, second, and third Tuesday of the month on topics like financial issues and job transition, or retirement strategies, and just a market update with all the craziness going on in the market. If any of those are of interest, again, you can sign up free of charge in the way that you signed up for this. So don't hesitate to reach out. I referenced the team. There's a lot of folks that put together the resources of Minnesota Crossroads, and all of us are available for you. If you want to meet one-on-one, if you want to just ask questions, you want coaching, whatever, we're here for you. And all you have to do is reach out. And the message that we want you to have is that you're not alone. The process can really be tough and it can be frustrating, but you are not alone. And so there are people to help you. And if you need a church home to help in your process, if you don't have one, any one of the churches that we're affiliated with, this is their contact information. They have in-person, and most still have streaming services available. And so a lot of resources. So hope you found it helpful. I mentioned the book, and the book, How Long, O Lord, How Long, written by 𝙤𝙤 𝘾𝙡𝙤𝙤𝙣𝙜, is available to you. And in fact, by attending today, you will get a free copy of this book. It will be sent to you. You don't even have to leave your house to get it. We will send you a copy of this book. It's a devotional that will help you in this process of job transition and just in the struggle sometimes. Found that if I just turn to the Word and keep God at the front of the process and pray, and turn to other people that are not only in the process, but other people of faith that can pray for you and provide you the support that we can really only get through faith, as was referenced in the video we saw at the beginning. But what a fun morning. I hope you found it beneficial. I took a lot of notes myself, but we are so thrilled that you were able to join us. Make sure you plug into the many resources of MN Crossroads, and we look forward to seeing you at a future event. The next presentation is going to be on Thursday evening, November 10th at 7 p.m. Tom Jacobson is going to be talking about kickstarting your job search from either the beginning of it or even 6 months into it. Kickstarting your job search. So that'll be another great resource for you. So we hope to see you at that event or another one, and wishing you a blessing on today, and hope to see you soon.